What would you do if you had to pay a $5,000 emergency bill right now? But let's say that you lose your job for the next 6 months and your main source of income is going to be cut off. Would you be able to handle something like that? I'm going to read this review from a Capital One credit card from Portia. I'm guessing that's a woman's name. Regarding a Capital, like I said, she had a Capital One credit card, and I'm going to try to capture what at least I felt when I was reading this, because this is what really kind of stood out to me. She goes, back in December of 2016, I lost my job and became unemployed, and I did not receive unemployment benefits. I expressed this to Capital One, being that I had a credit card with them with a $500 limit, and they insisted that my account will be fine. I missed December and January 2017 of $30 each, and once I got a job, I paid them on January 28th of 2017. I realized my credit score went from 680 to 450. So I called all 3 credit agencies, and they told me that there was nothing that would bring my score up to 680 besides Capital One removing those 2 missed late payments off of your credit report. So I called Capital One and spoke with over 20 supervisors who told me that they cannot remove negative remarks off of my credit report until I stumbled across one stupid supervisor who said that Capital One does remove negative remarks off of people's credit reports. It just depends on the situation. The manager then refused to explain why my situation did not apply and became argumentative. There is nothing you can do in America with a 457 credit score. Not rent, not take out a mortgage, not take out an auto loan, nothing, and they are quite aware of this. So I kept calling, and I finally got a supervisor who told me she would have 2 late payments removed from my credit report. So I waited 30 days. After 30 days, Equifax updated my score back up. I'm in the 600s, and the Capital One late payments remarks were gone. So I checked TransUnion and Experian, only to see my score with them was still 457. So I called back and asked, why was the late payment removed only from Equifax? The manager then told me that she would then resend back out to TransUnion and Experian to remove the negative remarks, making my score 457. Well, guess what happened in 30 more days? Yep, now all 3 agencies have my score back at 457. Even Equifax, who had just had my score at 680. So the manager kept lying to me from January of 2017 until May of 2017, saying that they will have my score fixed after they said that they couldn't, and having me go through all of this runaround. And this last paragraph is the one I really want to focus on, where she says she wrote numerous letters to corporate. She says they were apparently being abusive to her and ruining her life. And now she's saying that none of these apparently existed. I guess none of her complaints had existed. She says she's permanently not able to do anything because she missed 2 $30 payments with Capital One due to her being unemployed, even though they said to her everything was fine. Capital One are the only ones that can fix this situation, yet they refuse to do so. She says that she contacted 5 lawyers who refused the case because the payments were only $60 and that the credit card max was $500, which shows how disgusting they are, I guess, Capital One. She had her credit score drop 300 points for $60 and a measly $500 credit limit. Now, I genuinely feel for this woman's complaint, and I really see how this would be causing a lot of stress. But at the same time, I mean, because I'm looking at this right now, and it says she missed 2 $30 payments with Capital One due to her being unemployed. Imagine if she had had even just $1,000 saved in some kind of an emergency fund or just some kind of savings. All of this stress about that, she had to call corporate and that they were ruining her life and that they changed her credit score and then that, and that all this nonsense and stress that she went through could have all been avoided had she just, while she was employed, put away just $1,000. It would have avoided all of this. This is an example of where I'm going to show you of where the bowl is obviously inverted and a very, very narrow tip. So it's situations like this that I definitely feel for this, and I sympathize. I do. But at the same time, you can't live like this. You can't have your finances so tight to the point where a $60 late payment just completely derails everything that you have going on. In engineering, we have these things called safety factors. They're kind of like your O-craps. So imagine we're building a bridge, say from one point to another. I'm not going to actually try to build the bridge according to exactly what I'm going to need. So let's say I'm going to have a bridge and it needs to support a weight of, a bunch of cars. I don't know, right? You got a bunch of cars moving along in here, and I need to support the weight of all these cars. I'm not going to figure out what the actual weight of any car or average amount of cars is going to be. What I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out what that weight is most likely going to be, and then and let's say that weight is, I don't know, say it needs to handle 10 tons. I'm not going to design the bridge to handle exactly 10 tons because, well, what if there's an earthquake, or what if there's more cars, or what if it's rush hour, or what if I don't use the correct average weight of a car? There's a lot of different factors. So what I'm going to do is I'll take this and let's say multiply it by 2.5, or even let's say 3, just to be real safe. So if I multiply that by 3, that means I'm going to design a bridge that can handle 30 tons. So this safety factor of 3 is going to ensure that that my bridge is going to be able to support the load that I'm expecting to put on it. And likewise, when you're designing a money system or a financial situation, you need to be able to design it so that it can handle all different types of disturbances. Like, for example, let's say there's, a giant earthquake. Or what if there's a flash flood or whatever, and all this water starts rising up? In other words, my design needs to be able to handle all these different types of catastrophes. Otherwise, this thing can fail at a critical moment, and that could be potentially a lot of lives lost. And likewise, your money situation needs to be able to handle all these different types of financial hazards that might come along. These would be unexpected expenditures, some of them are even expected expenditures, as well as losses of income. Let me show you what I'm talking about with a demonstration that I learned from my controls class back in college. So when it comes to thinking about how a financial system or a money system can be stable and provide good, adequate support for you, I have a little model, and that's going to be, I've got this big old yellow bowl here and a tennis ball. So let me flip the camera down so you can kind of see this demonstration. Okay, so I have the bowl right here, and here is the ball. So what I'm talking about is, imagine if I put the ball right here in the middle of the bowl, and we'll call this, say, the starting position. If I hit this ball, give it a little bit of a tap, it'll roll around a little bit, but eventually it returns to the same position that it started out on. I can tap it this way, and as long as I don't give it too much of a hit to make it actually jump over the sides of the wall, it will pretty much always return to the position that it started out in. This is called stability, or the system of the ball in the bowl is stable. Now I'll flip the ball, or flip the bowl over, and now put the ball right on top here. And now you can probably imagine, if I even give this ball just a slight tap, and it falls over. Over here. No matter how light, pretty much light I tap it, I can do little taps. Very little taps. Just a little bit of a harder tap, it's gone. Right? In other words, the ball ends up in a position different than where it started from. It didn't come back to its starting position. This is called instability, or the system of the ball and the bowl is unstable. Now you can just imagine that the ball represents like your money situation, your finances, and the bowl is kind of like your system that you've developed in order to handle how your money operates. So the goal here is to have it so that your money situation can handle all these different types of disturbances that it's going to experience. Disturbances such as, here's a $720 brake repair. And here's a $2,000 medical expense that you had to go to the ER for that was really just, and your insurance didn't cover it. Ooh, that was close. Right. Again, the idea is to have a bowl with wide enough rims and that's tall enough so that it can handle any kind of disturbances that your money is going to experience. The main importance of having a bowl with these high walls is so that this ball has room to roll up and down and still remain back in the center, or return back to the center, so that the whole system basically stays stable. The idea is to design this bowl with the largest height that you can possibly make out of it. And the way you make a bowl financially high like this is, this would be composed of things like your emergency fund. Okay. You have sinking funds, which is money that you put away every month for certain bills that you expect to be there, right? Your budget, and finally the appropriate insurances. And this 8 to 12 months is basically like a safety factor. It's there to account for any unexpected things that you might not have ever even thought of. And just off as a side note, the reason why I say 8 to 12 months is because if you actually go back in history and look at all major recessions, the average time frame for recessions that we've had that are not more than a year is right around 8 to 10 months. So if you have an 8 to 12 month emergency fund, that's gonna pretty much guarantee you're gonna have enough savings set aside for almost any kind of regular recession that we'd ever have. But there's articles and surveys and studies that have all shown that there are folks out there that can't even afford a $400 emergency and are living paycheck to paycheck. And those folks would be in the inverted bowl situation, where even just the slightest little tip in any one direction can cause that thing to just start rolling downhill and just get out of control. And the issue is that the lower their emergency fund is, and they don't have a budget and they don't have sinking funds especially, what that's basically doing is it's turning this kind of like this flat edge right here, and it's almost making it like this, where it just makes it even smaller and smaller and smaller, so that even the slightest little bit, like even a couple $100s, is just gonna throw them completely out of whack. And what's gonna end up happening is they're gonna have to borrow money, they're gonna have to go into debt, they're gonna have to take out payday loans, they might have to take out extra kind of, extra bills, and even side hustles and everything, and trying to make any extra income is not even really going to fix the problem. So the key then would be to figuring out ways on how to take this bowl from inverted and putting it upright, so that this way your finances, or your money in this case, is actually able to return back to a normal position, shall you say, without having to borrow any money and without having to really affect your budget all that much. So if you're designing a bridge, you want to design it to be able to withstand, say, a 4 or 5.0 earthquake, a bunch of hurricanes, some typhoons, a bunch of weird dynamic loading from the cars and traffic that might be going across it. You design it to withstand those kind of loads and those kind of situations, so that this way it will be able to easily withstand normal everyday conditions. And the catastrophe scenario that I subject my finances to in order to stress test it are the following. Number one, a $5,000 bill right off the top that has to be paid right now. And number two, a job loss resulting in a major reduction in income, if not a complete reduction of income, for the next 6 months. I want to make sure that I have enough money in savings, insurance, sinking funds, and my budget is all squared away, so that I can be able to handle something like that without having to borrow any money or put on any extra added financial stress, so that this way I and my family can focus on getting a better job and getting everything back on track. And to finish off, this is more of a personal story from someone that I know, to really illustrate the importance of why you need to have the proper budgeting, the proper sinking funds, specifically the sinking funds, in place. So back when I was paying off my student loans, I was working 2 jobs. I had a job as an engineer and as a job as a host at the local IHOP. And while I was working at IHOP, there was another server that was there, really nice elderly woman. I think she was around like 65 years old, and really good at her job and everything. And her and I would sometimes, just kind of joke around and everything. And one time she was mentioning about how it was about her finances, and it was right around near November, one of the Novembers. And she said, because the main reason why she was working there was because she didn't have any retirement savings. She hadn't saved up throughout her life, and so she needed the income along with Social Security. So Social Security had apparently overpaid her, accidentally, I guess, and they sent her an extra check, which she turned around and cashed. Additionally, she had a truck that she very seldom ever brought in for maintenance and repairs, and I guess this truck had an issue with its alternator or the air conditioner or something like that. I think it was the alternator, and it cost about $700-800 to fix. Right at that time, she had 2 dogs, and they both ended up catching some kind of a worm or something like that, and so she needed to bring them to the vet, and that cost another several $100s. And then right after that, Social Security, which is the ones who overpaid her, sent her a note, says, "Oh, by the way, we need our money back. You need to pay us back." And you got to remember, she already spent that money. So now she has to repay Social Security the extra amount that she was paid already. And to top it all off, this happened right during Christmas time. And so now she had holiday spending that she needed to take care of. And this put her in quite a bit of a bind, because she had a pretty expensive car repair as well as a vet bill. She also ended up having to repay money that she had already spent. Not to mention, she also had a lot of holiday shopping that she hadn't saved up for throughout the year. Now, at the time, I was a freshly graduated college student. I didn't know my ass from a hole in the ground, and I wasn't about to tell this senior person that I respected, anything about life, yet alone money. And not to mention, I was just learning about this stuff as well. But every time I reflect on that story, and every time I think back on her and what her situation was like, I'm constantly reminded of why it's so important to build these walls, these ball walls. This is the best analogy that I can come up with. How much less stress would she have had and had to go through if she had a car fund? Because it's a car, it's going to break down. It's a guarantee. When it's going to happen and what the bill's going to be is an unknown, but it's a guarantee that it's going to happen. It's a mechanical device. That's what mechanical devices do. The vets, if you have animals, if you have pets, you should have a pet fund. Additionally, a regular emergency fund just to handle anything that's weird that might come up and unexpected that you may not be aware of. When you have a budget, having a budget that is, at least for me and for us, we have a budget that is 1 month ahead of expenses, so that this way all the next month's bills are all taken care of. All the next bills right now, I'm filming this right now in February, the end of February, all of March bills are paid up. They're all taken care of. So we don't have to worry about that. So any extra unexpected income that might end up coming in should go off into a savings account temporarily until, say, I would verify with the sender that, okay, this money is legitimately mine. I can do with it as I see fit. Perfectly fine. Now I can go ahead and spend it. And then finally, having a sinking fund every month for holiday shopping, just putting money away, because you know when the holidays are going to be. You know when birthdays are going to be there. You know when Christmas is going to be there. You know when Hanukkah is going to be there. You know when anniversaries and Mother's Day, Father's Day are coming up. So there's no reason to not have money set aside for those occasions. I hope these stories, as they've done for me, kind of inspire you to make sure that your finances are capable and ready of handling any kind of financial or money disaster that may come along your way. As always, thanks for watching and have a great weekend.